What?
Why are you shaking your head?
You're welcome.
Yo, what is going on? Welcome to week 4 Cashing Points. We're back, baby. I have internet. Unfortunately, we lost a man this week. Jake Tribbey is dealing with some power issues because of the hurricane. I hope everybody is doing well and safe. I know it's affected just so many states, so much flooding. Yeah, and if you're hanging out with us tonight, I hope you are well. Mr. CEO Scott Barrett is joining in Jake's place tonight, along with Mark Garcia, aka Hilo. Sorry for the delay. We had a little bit of technical difficulties getting in, and let's get right to it. We got a full slate. We'll get started here with Steelers and the Colts. Mark, I'll throw it to you for your thoughts here. Justin Fields down at 5,500. Obviously, a pretty good spot for Colts. What are your thoughts on this game? This is one of many games this week that has a pretty middling total, but I do see some paths to upside because Richardson can get the big play. Justin Fields is playing better. What do you think about this game, man?
Yeah, I'm kind of completely off the Colts. I don't know if it's coaching schematics. I don't know what the deal is, but Anthony Richardson is down to 8% scramble rate when pressured this season. That is way, way down from what we saw in that snapshot last year. When we look at like the composition of this game, it's really like how these teams are going to try and win. The Steelers want to control the pace, control with their defense. They want to force teams to march the field on defense and allow their pass rush to like create disruption. On the offensive side of the ball, they want to control the ball, move the ball methodically, and control the clock. And that just, to me, screams Najee Harris is going to see a massive workload in this spot. So 5,600 without Jaylen Warren, I'm just clicking that button, and I'll differentiate elsewhere.
Yeah, the path is clear for Najee right now. I do like George Pickens quite a bit at 5,700 as well. Appreciate it, Robert. Yeah, sorry for the delay, man. I think Najee's a strong play. Scott, I'll kick it to you for your thoughts on A-Rich. Obviously, bottom 3 passer in the NFL right now. Do you think he scrambles more this week? Do you think he gets more design stuff going? Because that's been the surprising thing is the design stuff they've just kind of taken out of the offense here for Richardson.
Yeah, I think there's a chance. 2% ownership. I wouldn't be mad at anyone who played him. Like we know he has 27 plus DK upside. He showed that in week 1. But yeah, everything Hilo said is right. He's not running enough and he's not playing well. It's just because he's playing so poorly. Like, I don't know why you wouldn't just double his design runs like we saw with Justin Fields his second year in Chicago. I had him as my Exodia play and I got a ton of shit for that. And then they just started unleashing him. And so, you can't really predict when that's going to happen. It's not a good matchup, but 2% ownership, I wouldn't be mad at that. The funny thing is, like, if you stacked it with anyone, I think it would be Alec Pierce, who Richardson wore an Alec Pierce shirt to the game in week 2, and he's led the team in receiving yards every week thus far. That's the one thing Richardson does well is the deep ball. But yeah, like Hailu said, not really on it. I think Najee Harris is a great play, great value. Colts ranked dead last to running backs and schedule adjusted rushing fantasy points per game. They're giving up a league high rushing yards per game. No DeForest Buckner. It's a good matchup. I think Fields is a really good play. He's coming in at lower ownership as well, 5%. Yeah. And I love George Pickens. George Pickens is one of my favorite plays of the slate. A concern being maybe it's just all Najee, right? But this is my thesis, right? Week 1 up against AJ Terrell, top 5 in ass. Week 2 up against Patrick Surtain, top 5 in ass. Single high matchups. He gets the 2 high matchup. Last week, underwhelms. Back to a single high matchup with really bad cornerbacks, certainly nowhere near on the caliber of a Patrick Surtain or an AJ Terrell. And yeah, those first 2 weeks, Pickens was like top 7 in yards per route run. And he was averaging like 7 yards per route run if you gave him credit for all the big plays he had that were negated or overturned. And so, yeah, I just see a lot of upside for a player I have conviction on. It wouldn't shock me if he had some 8 catch, 160 yard, 2 touchdown game. That's going to come at some point. And this might be the perfect matchup for it. It's really just a matter of how much Pittsburgh needs to pass in this contest. On paper, is it better than Najee plus Steelers defense? Maybe not, but I like that upside.
No, it's not. But Najee's going to be the chalk. I'm with you on Pickens. I just think he's an awesome play. Definitely playing with Fields too. I think Fields is going to come in a little lower owned too, because nobody's going to really want to play Fields and Najee together. All right, we'll keep it moving. Vikings and the Packers. Totals 43.5. Packers are getting 2.5. I think they're going to get Jordan Addison back. The Vikings are this week. So definitely, kind of clears up their 3 receiver set. We loved Sam Darnold last week. Sam Darnold and Jefferson stacks, that is. I think Jordan Love's going to play. That's kind of the biggest thing for this game. It seemed like last week was a long shot. This week seems like it's much, much closer. And the markets think Jordan Love is in. He has a prop up. Packers are 2.5-point favorites. Mark, I'll throw it to you first for your thoughts on this game. What I guess the big question is, what's Love's health? If he's kind of a sitting duck back there, obviously it's going to harm the offense a little bit. But what do you think about this game, man? Is it another Sam Darnold week?
I think this game has probably a pretty wide range of outcomes. And I say that because when you think through schematically how these two teams operate, Matt LaFleur is probably the top offensive play caller in the game right now. And on the other side, Brian Flores is probably one of the top, if not the top defensive minds in football right now. So that chess match with those two, that's from a real world football perspective, is going to be awesome to watch as a fan. And when you get these strength on strength matchups or these weakness on weakness matchups, think of it like a bad pitcher against a bad offense in baseball, playing DFS baseball, or a really good pitcher against a really good offense. Most of the time, the good pitcher is going to beat a good offense. Most of the time, bad hitting is going to beat a bad pitcher. But you really get a really wide range of outcomes in that situation when it's a strength on strength or a weakness on weakness matchup. So either side of that can really win out. And I think it'll be up to the Packers to kind of dictate that if this game is going to outperform expectations. A lot of that kind of rests with Jordan Love, with Jaden Reed, probably his ability to generate splash plays against zone coverage, because he's really there's against zone type guys. So I don't know, from a fan's perspective, I cannot wait to watch this game. I'm largely staying away. And I guess from a Packers perspective, I really want to see what happens if Aaron Jones finds the end zone after he tried the Lambeau leap on the road at the Giants in week 1, which was hilarious. But yeah, I don't know. I'm kind of more so staying away from for fantasy purposes and just kind of looking forward to watching this game.
Yeah, Aaron Jones is getting tossed out of the club, man. He tries to go for the Lambeau leap. He's getting tossed out. I think he's a really good play. I'm kind of with you. If Love were a little healthier, this game would be pretty hot. I do like Aaron Jones quite a bit, Scott. 6,400 just feels like, kind of too cheap of a price for a player who has, pretty solid ceiling in this offense. Obviously, 6 and 6 targets back-to-back games. What do you think about him? What do you think about Vikes and Packs?
Yeah, I think he's a great play. 6,400, too cheap. He's looked great. He's looked amazing. I think he leads all running backs in yards after contact per attempt. Green Bay is a top 5 pass funnel. They're also favored by 2.5 points. Aaron Jones notoriously more productive in wins than losses, but it's also a revenge game. And I know things went poorly in the exit. Aaron Jones is really unhappy with how he was treated. Yeah, I think he's a great play, great value. But if Jordan Love plays, I also really like Jaden Reed. I kind of want to go all in on him, and that's stupid. Don't do that, because Green Bay's wide receivers are already so unpredictable. I just have so much conviction in the player, though. If you look at his last 9 games with Jordan Love under center, he's averaging 19.9 fantasy points per game. That would have ranked as the wide receiver 6 last year. His route share has come up considerably. He leads all wide receivers in fantasy points per route run. Over this stretch I'm talking about, I think he ranks 1st in fantasy points per route run, 1st in fantasy points over expectation, and only Tyreek Hill, Deebo Samuel are in either of those top 3s. And it's just, to me, he feels like an outlier talent in an outlier offense. And yeah, I just love him.
Love that call, and I like it for this week especially. Obviously, Flores is going to blitz. They'll look like they're going to blitz and pull out of it, but they're going to blitz a ton. It's going to leave the middle of the field open.
They play a lot of too high, but
Yeah.
Reed actually ranks top 10 among all players in yards per route run against too high. I think he's like equally efficient. So that component of the matchup doesn't scare me. But yeah, obviously Vikings defense looks elite.
Yeah, that was kind of the big thing too, is Reed, just like how much Reed would rotate with Watson. And so far, Watson's at like a 56% route share or something like that, 55%. Reed is still not playing a ton in 12 or, the two tight end stuff, but I just don't really think that matters for this offense because they don't play a ton of that. I don't think I have anything else from this game. We'll keep it going here. Jags and the Texans. Texans 6.5 point favorites. Total is 44.5. No Tank Dell, no Evan Ingram this week for both sides. Scott, I'll throw it back to you first. I mean, Nico Collins is 7,200. He's probably 1K too cheap, and Tank Dell's out. And the Jags play so much man, and Nico over the last couple of years is third only to Tyreek and CeeDee Lamb in yards per route run. Nico is probably going to end up being the most popular receiver play on the slate, right? It's either him or Deontay, I think.
Yeah, I mean, just everything about this it's the nuts schematic matchup. It's a great on paper matchup. It's a guy who looks like the second coming of Julio Jones. There's no Tank Dell. The one wrench here is this hamstring injury. And I was talking to my Houston sources, even though Nico practiced today and he's really going to try and play, they were told it's really a true game time decision from someone who would know. And, that would really change things. And like, even just the fact that it's coming down to a game time decision with a guy as chalky as he is, I don't know. Maybe that's worth leaning into a Stephon Diggs. I'm curious to hear what Hilo thinks.
Yeah, that's actually the first time I've heard that. So I was like trying to process as you were talking. Yeah, I mean, any wide receiver, if he's a true game time decision, and he was limited today after missing yesterday, is that accurate?
Let me double check.
I believe that's accurate.
No, he's full practice today. Nico's full practice.
Wow, really?
Yeah.
And that's what I thought. Okay.
Yeah.
The fact that he was a full go, hamstrings are always worrisome for wide receivers. Like we talked about last week with AJ Brown, these guys are asked to go from stationary to full out dead ass sprint 30 to 40 times a game. For a hamstring injury, that is a big ask. So hamstrings for wide receivers always give me pause. But the spot is so good.
Mm-hmm.
And there's like Scott said, there's always credence to a leverage play, particularly for a guy of the pedigree of Stephon Diggs. It's just that Nico is the big play guy in this offense. Steph Diggs is going to have to see 12, 13, 14 targets to get there based on his role at this stage of his career. So while that can happen,
thing is, I don't know that we could bank on that, him sticking to that low ADOT role without Tank Dell. I think we could see that change.
That was my read too. I think they play Diggs way more outside with no Dell, and they kind of elevate one of Hutchinson, Woods, or Mechie, and just kind of rotate those guys through. And if one of them pops, we'll see. I actually think Dalton Schultz plays tight end this week and gets the underneath stuff.
That would be my pivot. Is Schultz?
Yeah. I think he's a really strong contrarian play. 4,100. Obviously, no involvement in the passing offense so far, but I think he gets the Diggs role. Diggs plays more outside this week. Tight end is so gross this week, but I really do actually like Dalton Schultz. We got to talk through their backfield, Mark, too. It seems like Joe Mixon's going to try to play. If it's no Joe Mixon, we'll get Cam Akers and Dare Ogunbowale. Mixon was limited today, didn't practice Wednesday or Thursday, so he's probably 50-50 too, honestly. Real quick, what's your read on their backfield if it's no Mixon?
So the way that Bobby Slowick designs this offense is built to leverage a deep passing game off of play action, pre-snap motion that is predicated on a successful run game. So while it's good for the pass game, if Joe Mixon returns, I'm not going there, and I'm not going to Cam Akers if Mixon is out. I'm more hoping that like Mixon plays just for the threat of like efficiency on early downs. Akers is splitting time with Dare Ogunbowale if Mixon doesn't go. So it's just not enticing to me. This is a pass funnel matchup. Like, yeah, the Jags aren't necessarily good against the run, but they're really, really bad against the pass. So yeah, this is just a spot where I want to be buying into Houston. We didn't mention the quarterback situation. The only way I'm playing CJ Stroud is if Nico plays, and I'm playing him with Nico Collins. The upside, I don't think, is the same if Nico is limited or out. And that's particularly important because of the state of the quarterback position this week. So there's not a lot to pay up for. There's not a lot of value that allows you to pay up for it. So I'd be interested in Stroud and Nico together.
Yeah, nice. Really, the only like projected value is, well, Jaden Daniels once again is a pretty strong value, but Justin Fields I think is the clear value, and Andy Dalton. But you're right, it's a really tricky week at quarterback on DK. We got to talk Jags. I don't want to do it, but we have to.
I could talk for hours on the Jags this week, actually, but I'm not going to.
Yeah, dude, I'm just sick of this team. It took 3 weeks. I'm joking though. Really, I mean, Brian Thomas and Christian Kirk are really strong values. I think even if Evan Ingram played, there would be pretty decent values. But Evan Ingram's out. It's going to condense targets quite a bit. Last week, Kirk got 30% of the first reads. Thomas was right behind him. I think Thomas, Scott, has the better schematic matchup because Texans have been so bad on the boundary. But both are really strong plays, and both, I think, are going to come in under own, just relative to the slate.
So I got a lot. We're still live, right? You guys still hear me?
Yeah, I think we lost Scott though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey.
I'll
talk about the Jags real quick while we wait for Scott to come back.
Yeah, you said you wanted to talk for hours about the Jags. You get your opportunity
right?
here.
I'll cover a lot of this in the cash game and top DFS values article because I talk a little bit about it. But the DeMeco Ryans defense is leading the league in quarters utilization right now. So cover 4 quarters at like just under 28%. Christian Kirk ranked second in the NFL in fantasy points per route run against quarters last season, second only to Jalen Waddle. And they are in zone and in cover 3 if they're not in quarters effectively. They don't run a lot of cover 2. The Jaguars against cover 3 last season, their huckleberries were Evan Ingram, who's going to be out, and Calvin Ridley, who's no longer in town. So all of that combines to me, and with this, like, I think this is my theory. I have a theory about head coach Doug Peterson's comments after the game last week. He said something, we're not going to rule out any changes. A lot of people, I think, read that as we might be exploring personnel changes. I view that as maybe, just maybe, we see him take offensive play calling duties back from Press Taylor, which would be a massive success for Christian Kirk. Right now, Trevor Lawrence is second in the league in average intended air yards because they're consistently falling behind the sticks. They're trying to run too much on early downs, and it's not effective with Travis Etienne currently. So if this offense is going to make a turnaround, to me, the best case scenario for that is if Doug Peterson takes offensive play calling duties back, if they start working these short intermediate first down pass stuff to Christian Kirk, and they stop getting from they get out from under being in long down and distance situations. So that's my theory. Can that happen? I don't know. Potentially. Will that happen? I don't know. Potentially. But I think there's a lot of upside here. And if you look at DeMeco Ryans' defenses, yes, this year they have filtered the second fewest targets to slot position, but they played the Bears without Keenan Allen. They played the Colts without Josh Downs, and they played the Vikings without TJ Hawkinson, who is effectively their slot guy. So I think there's a lot of noise in that. You go back to 2022 when DeMeco Ryans was in San Francisco, they allowed the 7th most yards to the slot position. You go back to last year in Houston, they allowed the 9th most yards to the slot position. So I actually think schematically, this is a really, really enticing spot for Christian Kirk.
Yeah, my one pushback though, and I hear you on the play calling stuff. My one pushback is this is Doug Peterson's offense. I mean, Press Taylor might be calling the plays, but Peterson, this is his designed offense.
Yeah.
And we saw that last week. We saw, first 2 weeks, Kirk was like, just not even a part of the attack. And, last week, finally got him kind of reintegrated. Scott, what do you think about Jags here? We got you back.
Yeah, I'm kind of with Hilo. I think it's a really good matchup. You're not really seeing it in the numbers, partly due to the quarterbacks that he played thus far, but you see it in ass allowed, which I guess is a new metric we have. But yeah, Houston's cornerbacks are getting beat, giving up a lot of separation. I like the Kirk shout. Massive increase in first read target share last week, although was up against a generational slot funnel on the Bills. But yeah, he is the king of quarters coverage, so he's going to see a lot of that. I also like Brenton Strange, and Kirk is cheaper than BTJ, by the way. And Brenton Strange, I think, is a good value, 3,100 over the last 2 weeks, 6 targets per game, 82.5 air yards per game, 9.4 fantasy points per game at a super gross position. Those are like top 6 numbers. Route share is not really there, but like 3,100 tight end sucks. Like he's up there.
Yeah, the concern here with him is just this offensive line is trash, and they ask him to do a little bit of blocking.
I don't know that. I mean, it is the offensive. I also think that's a Trevor thing. Like Trevor strikes me as the quarterback who, like, you give him 3 elite wide receivers and Doug Peterson, he's going to be, I don't know, the 14th best quarterback. But you give him an elite offensive line with like sub-mediocre wide receivers, he could be a top 10 quarterback.
Yeah, it's all one thing. The offense has been mid. The offensive line has not progressed at all in 3 years. And, Lawrence is still Lawrence. Still making the same mistakes.
I think Brett comped him to Bambi last year with him in the pocket facing pressure. Like he's so like gangly and awkward. I don't know.
The play last week where he bailed the pocket, I think it was on a 3rd or 4th down. The game was over, but he bailed the pocket.
Yeah.
He was like sensing pressure. He's not a good player, man. All right, we got to keep it moving here. Yeah, definitely like Kirk and Thomas in this spot. And Scott's on Brenton Strange, like that call a lot. All right, Saints and Falcons. Falcons are 3-point favorites. Totals 41 and a half. Bijan Robinson is fine. He's off the injury report. No concerns there. He's 7,400. Scott, I'll throw it to you first, man, for your thoughts on this game. Kamara is a little nicked up in this spot. I think they're going to get Taysom Hill back, but obviously Kamara last week, just a massive, massive role, like 90% snap share, I think it was. Taysom should be back, might be a little limited here. What do you think about Saints and Kamara? And, what did you think of last week, too? Because, it just seemed like Carr was a couple of throws away from not like a great game, but pretty good one.
Yeah, so I loved Carr last week. He was also chalky. He was not a contrarian play. He so the 2 end zone shots to Rashid Shaheed that bounced off his hands. But I think what really went wrong here was their center, one of the best centers in football, played only about 3 snaps. Cesar Ruiz also picked up an injury. They didn't have Taysom Hill, who was really integral to the offense in terms of their personnel diversity, in terms of using him in motion to diagnose coverages. And so it was all that. And like interior pressure is rough. He was under pressure on 44% of his dropbacks. Like that's the one thing that only ever made Tom Brady look mortal in his career. But now you also have Chris Olave, who picked up a hamstring today. Dude, this week's slate is so brutal, and this year is rough. Kamara, how much of that snap share was due to Taysom being out, though? Because he was only at a 66% snap share in the first half of the first 2 weeks. But then again, just based on last week's usage, volume, production to date, he looks like this year's Christian McCaffrey. I think he's a really strong play. Olave, if he's out, I think he's out. What does that do to Shaheed? Does that change his role? Does it force feed him volume, or is he still kind of just a deep shot, which isn't great for Carr, who's going to be under pressure a lot? Is there an upside argument to be made just because, they had a bad week last week, but they were looking like the best offense in football the first 2 weeks, and I don't know. This one's giving me a headache, so make it easy on me, Hilo.
I'll make it easy. I think my favorite play from this game is the Saints defense.
Okay.
They're second in pressure rate. They've generated the second most turnovers. And Atlanta has allowed 17 hurries and 30 total pressures. So dependent on, how Kirk Cousins' mobility is, that could be a significant issue here.
Yeah, Cousins was under duress week 1 and it's been a lot better the last couple weeks, and he's looked better, but I like that call a lot. Saints, underrated defense. Once again, they have an underrated defense every year. And if Olave's out, just final note on this game before we keep it moving, if Olave's out, it just kind of really nukes this game. He's a huge avenue to big plays for the Saints, obviously. And for Scott's point, bringing up, does it change Shaheed's role? All of that is all fair. They'll play some Mason Tipton. We might get some A.T. Perry this week.
No, he's out. Perry's out.
Oh yeah, he's got the the hamstring. That's right. So it will be Tipton. They're gonna go heavy tight end then. They'll just play all their tight ends. Okay.
But I mean, London pops as a top value. Bijan pops as a top value. Mooney's even up there. But Hilo makes a great point on this Saints defense looking really legit, and maybe Atlanta's offensive line not so much. So keep that in mind.
Yeah, Mooney's probably my second favorite play from this game, to be honest.
Yeah, I might be with you.
Yeah, Drake London's going against perennial X remover, Marshawn Lattimore. He'll see a good deal of him. Mooney, I mean, his role in this offense is legit. He's still only priced at 40.
It's the role we all wanted for Kyle Pitts.
Yeah. Well, Kyle Pitts is not good at football. I'm going to go on record saying.
Whoa.
That, so, yeah.
That's a hot take. Trey, clip this. Let's hear it.
It's time. It's time we be real. So I'll speak the
This
truth.
is what I'm saying. Like, if you're a generational talent, we shouldn't be 47 games into your career begging for better usage.
Yeah.
Brett said something on his show with Graham on Thursday. He said he's just being used incorrectly. He's more of a Gronk type. And like, that big play, that was like kind of like a vintage Gronk play. You need to do more of that. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know.
Dude,
I just had such higher hopes for him.
He looks really slow in routes right now. And I know he's not a slow guy, but he looks really, really slow in routes. I don't know if that's something with his knees or what's going on. He's not attacking the football at the point of target. He's getting a lot of passes defended in his area of or on his targets because he's not really attacking the football. He's kind of just sitting back and waiting. He's playing like he is Travis Kelce's size, but he's 40 pounds lighter. So it's just not, I don't know. It just hasn't clicked yet. There's something wrong.
I like to hear this just because the coach was asked about this and he was like, well, it's like coverages dictate matchups, dictate targets. And then I just quote tweeted it with according to or fantasy points data, Kyle Pitts averages a 0.0 ass against man coverage, against zone cover. And it went viral, but I had so many Falcons fans telling me, oh, you don't know what you're talking about. You don't. Yeah. But if you watch the tape, he's not separating.
It just might not be
he
good.
He hasn't been since 22. I mean, before he hurt his knee, the separation stuff was awesome on him in 22. And since then it has been, well, ass, honestly. I mean, really, it's not been good.
The
man.
badass,
dude, the badass. I'm a little higher on Drake London than you guys. I'll be honest. I think Marshawn Lattimore is a good corner, but they play a ton of man. London is an ass, man. The separation stuff has been really good on him. 43% first read target share last 2 weeks after week 1. Kind of being in the tubes. I think 6,200 is a really good price for him. Honestly, he's my favorite play from this game. Maybe my only play from this game I really like. I did give out a Rashid Shaheed over this afternoon, which feels pretty good now considering the Olave news. All right, we'll keep it going. Rams and the Bears. Caleb Williams put up a lot of stats last week, Mark, but going back and watching him, it was not good.
Yeah.
Not good at all, dude. Look, a couple of broken plays. He could have had some big yards to Odunze, but I mean, he threw for 363, 2 touchdowns. But I mean, you go back and watch, it was not pretty. This is another pretty good spot. I mean, we kind of identified that last week. If there was a decent spot, Colts don't get a lot of pressure. Their secondary stinks. Kind of the same for the Rams, a little bit better maybe, but man, I just don't have high hopes for this game. What do you think, man?
Yeah, it all comes back to Shane Waldron. His offense is really, really trash when you watch the tape. There was a 3rd and 9 for backed up next to their own end zone in the second half last week, and he spread out the formation. He had flanking wide receivers, 2 on each side, or one was a running back. And spreads it out, flanks, and the guys on the outside run like 9-yard comebacks, and the two guys out of the wide slot run go routes. And it's like the middle of the field is completely open. It's 3rd and 9. You're backed up in your own ends. And what the hell are we doing? The structure of this offense is really, really broken. So until that changes, and I'll just continue being underweight this team, I was in best ball, and that's carried through to the season just because Shane Waldron is like not good. And he's placing Caleb Williams in, like, he's got to climb Mount Everest to return like viable fantasy scores. And it's like, okay, he did so last week on 52 pass attempts. It's probably not going to be the case every week. So I don't know. And furthering that discussion, like Keenan Allen is the most adept player against zone coverage. They're expecting to see like 83% zone. And then it's Cole Kmet. So like DJ Moore has had these wild splits, man zone. And Rome Odunze hasn't really, taken off against zone. He did all of his damage last week against single high, and we're expecting the Rams to play almost no single high. So I don't know. This is just a weird macro matchup from a schematic standpoint that I don't know if I can really crack. The player that's most interesting to me, and this takes a little bit of faith, is like, does Roschon Johnson take over the primary running back role here? We have coach speak saying he's earned more. Well, I guess it's reporter speak, right? It's not even coach speak. I don't think Eberflus has said anything to that effect, but I think that came from, I forget who it was, like some NFL insider said that Roschon is probably going to get.
I think it was Jeremy Fowler from ESPN.
Yeah, that sounds right. Yeah.
I think Joe put that in Discord this week.
Yeah, so I don't know, like if Roschon, like he is very clearly the best suited back for this offense. He is able to do the grindy stuff. He is able to do the pass catching stuff. So like if they're ever going to give a back like 65% of the opportunities, like he's best suited to do that in this offense. So I don't know. At 4,100, it's worth a GPP shot or two.
Yeah, it was weird. Johnson played a bunch in their first preseason game over Herbert, and I think he picked up an injury, and just that's part of the reason why he wasn't involved in the offense. He had a minor toe injury week 1, then 2 weeks ago in week 2, he only played special teams, and then last week, I mean, Swift, man, just is so dusty. They have to play Johnson more. 4,100, interesting tournament play. Bears offense, though, I mean, I'm going to give Waldron one more week, maybe with Keenan in there. This changes a little bit, but I mean, they are bottom 6 in motion rate with these 3 receivers. I mean, Colts, Jets, Browns, Panthers, and Broncos are the only more static offenses. It's hard to like a lot from this game. Scott, I'll go to you for your thoughts on, any additional thoughts on Rams. Bears? What do you think about Rams in this spot? And is there any interest in playing any of these guys? I mean, Stafford's playing well. It's a tough spot, but it feels thin with this offense right now.
Yeah, I think I think Kyron's always in play. You really saw him getting schemed up, and as the sort of focal point of the offense last week. He has massive touchdown upside. He leads the league in red zone XTD just like he did last year. I think you can make a case for Kobe Parkinson, Demarcus Robinson, Tutu Atwell, who are really the main 3 receivers last week. They're not super high on my radar, but I do like Caleb Williams as a contrarian play. I think he's projected at 2 or 3%. And I get the issues with Shane Waldron. I agree. I think he's terrible, but it's still, the guy threw 58 times last week, supposedly generational quarterback. They have no running game. These are the top 2 teams by pace of play. Vegas is excited about this game. They're cheap. And the Rams are awful. They've given up 250 plus passing yards and 3 passing touchdowns in back-to-back weeks. I've written up the wide receiver 1 versus the Commanders every single week for the past, 20 games that they've played. And I think the Rams right now are the worst defense to opposing receivers. I do like Romo Dunze. He really out alpha DJ Moore last week, who did basically nothing outside of that fluky Hail Mary, led the league in air yards last week. In the second half, it was a 60% air yardage share to DJ Moore's 2%. Just missed Odunze just barely a few times. I think if Keenan plays, he's going to be very limited out there. yeah, Odunze 5,200, 2% ownership. I just think there's more upside from this game than it's getting credit for. It's not really super high on my list, but like Rams defense is awful. And I like that shout out on the running back. You know, he's really cheap, so he can unlock some things where, you know, even if he doesn't go nuclear, it's a pretty interesting bet. You're speechless.
No, I was just scrolling through tight ends real quick. That honestly, the tight ends.
I mean, Komet's in there too. He's not high. I might have written him up and then deleted it, but it's just like, you have the most XFP by any tight end in any week this season by like 40% on like a 50% route share. Maybe like Waldron isn't that stupid and like he'll barely play Everett this week. No, he's that stupid, but still.
They did flip last week. Komet and Everett did flip. I was just scrolling through tight end projections, man. It's just brutal. I was mistaken. I do like Parkinson more than I said. I think he's definitely in play. Obviously, huge route share. I was just thinking about something with Waldron. Oh, you said DJ Moore, and you know his role is just kind of trash right now. That's all a Waldron thing. He's getting all the bullshit, stupid screens near the line of scrimmage. It's ridiculous. I do think that might change a little bit with Keenan this week. All right, we got to keep it moving here, guys. Eagles and the Bucks. Eagles are 1.5 point favorites, 42.5 total. Devonta Smith won't play. AJ Brown, I don't think has practiced all week. He's highly unlikely to play at this point. Actually, I take it back. AJ Brown limited practice today. Didn't practice Wednesday and Thursday. Mark, I'll throw it to you, man. Jalen Hurts is playing a little better as of late. He is going to get the crap blitzed out of him in this spot. He's down. Devonta Smith, AJ Brown might be a little gimpy. What do you think about Eagles and Bucks?
Yeah, I mean, this Sirianni offense is kind of, if one of their primary pieces is out, it just becomes more concentrated. So anytime one of those guys is out, I always have interest in the remaining primary pieces. So that's Saquon, that's Dallas Goedert really is it. How effective is AJ Brown? We just talked about how wide receiver hamstrings are a big thing. So I think you can play both of them. I think you can play them together without their quarterback. I'm kind of all over those two. Yeah, like you got to pay a pretty penny for Saquon on a slate where there's not a lot of value that projects well. But I really like the remaining primaries here.
Yeah, Saquon is my favorite play on the slate. It's because it's so hard to get to him. He projects so well. Scott, I know you said Kamara is kind of this year's CMC. I think Barkley's got him beat. Just the role has been bananas. He looks incredible. What do you think about Eagles Bucks, man? Yeah,
I think if you wanted to say Goddard or Barkley on every lineup, like kind of hard to argue against that. Or it's either that or Bucks D, surprises. It's just one of the most concentrated offenses in football historically. Now, even more highly concentrated, missing those big two pieces. Also, Antoine Winfield's out for the Buccaneers. And yeah, I'm pretty into the Buccaneers side. We have Baker Mayfield at 1% ownership. I know he sucked last week and Eagles defense was really good last week, but Baker was top 3 in fantasy points per dropback, EPA per play heading into that week. No Jalen McMillan, maybe that concentrates things more. Chris Godwin in the Cooper Kupp role is smashing. One of the top 3 wide receivers in fantasy right now. He gets another nuts matchup. But I also still like Mike Evans. He's had a string of really tough matchups, and Buccaneers secondary ranks bottom 3 by ass allowed. I just think he's due to go off. He was number 1 in ass heading into the Patrick Surtain shadow last week. He's going to be a fraction of the ownership of Chris Godwin. So yeah, I'm into that.
It's always Chris Godwin week for me, but I have the same thought, Scott. That
he is expensive, and it's kind of hard this week to pay up. But
it is. But I had the same thought. This is the week that kind of get Evans fed. The matchup is clearly in favor of Godwin, though, Mark. But
yeah, Vontae Maddox has really sucked this year.
Yeah, he's not good, man.
Yeah,
There's also a squeaky wheel. He was elite like 2 years ago,
Yeah.
but you see that with cornerbacks where they go from like
They
elite
just
to
die.
bottom.
It's like a wide
insane.
receiver cliff. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's like a running back cliff, honestly. It's just like one day they just lose it, you know.
There's a squeaky wheel narrative with
Yeah.
Evans too. Liam Cohen
Yeah.
said, yeah, okay, you know.
I'm with you on that. I think this is an Evans spot. Godwin's going to get his though. Mark, any other thoughts closing on this game? I mean, Bucky Irving popped up with a little hamstring injury this week, but I think he's going to play and be fine. I'm not playing Rashad White. Any other thoughts?
Nothing. Nope, nothing to add.
Yeah. All right. Keep it going. Game of the week, in my opinion. Bengals and the Panthers. Bengals are 4.5-point favorites on the road. 47.5 is the total. Mark, Deontay Johnson's 5,600 on DK. He's going to be the highest owned player, or at least the highest owned receiver on the slate. I think Jordan Mason might be the highest owned player once again for like the fourth straight week. But Andy Dalton's 53. And right now he's projecting for sub 5% ownership in a game with 47.5 total. What do you think about Panthers, Dalton? You know, just getting competent quarterback play, man. Look at how far it can take you.
Yeah, and what really stood out to me was Andy Dalton had like an 80% first read target rate in his start. So that to me is scheme. That to me is Dave Canales simplifying things, making the offense fluid, and making it so that he places the first read in position to succeed. And that first read at a 43% rate in week 3 was Deontay Johnson. So to me, that is Dave Canales made good on his promise in preseason that the offense was going to flow through Deontay Johnson. Chuba Hubbard is the other interesting piece here. If you play all of Andy Dalton, Chuba Hubbard, and Deontay Johnson, that's only 16.6 in salary on DraftKings. And that gives you access to immense ceiling. You talk about a 4x multiplier to keep you on a 200-point pace. That's only 22 points per those 3 players to keep you on a 200-point pace this week. So I think that's a viable player block type mentality. You can do it in almost any contest size because it allows you to get some studs in there alongside those guys. So really, really like that. On the other side, one of the interesting plays to me, we know that Jamar Chase is going to be viable here, but in a matchup where we don't expect the Bengals to be pressured a lot, similar to what they saw last week, we saw Chase Brown be more involved. We saw him lead the team in rushing. He didn't get the touchdown that went to Zach Moss, but if this guy, and he's very clearly the most explosive back on the roster, and he could be one of the more explosive backs in the league if he had good coaching, which he doesn't, but in a spot where he shouldn't be asked to do much pass protection, there could be a chance to get Chase Brown some more opportunities here. And he's the kind of back, I'm not going to compare him to Devon Achane, but he's the kind of back similar to Achane that can do some significant damage on 12, 14 type touch workload here. So he's very, very interesting to me this week.
Chase Brown's super explosive, but he has the vision of a blindfolded squirrel.
Dude, I made a comparison just like that last week.
Yeah. I mean, he's explosive, man, but he cannot process.
And he beats block bulls. It's like, dude, give it a minute.
The pass protection stuff has been a constant with him, but the vision is just so bad. Scott, I'll throw it to you for your thoughts on Bengals and what do you think about this spot? I was kind of feeling a T. Higgins week. I don't think anybody's going to be on it. He's kind of a weird price on DK, kind of caught in the middle in receivers this week, but full route share last week, got 1 fewer first read than Chase. Panthers have been bad on the corner. Kind of feels like we were just talking Mike Evans squeaky wheel. This kind of feels like a T. Higgins squeaky wheel.
Yeah, I don't know. 39 yards last week. I'm just a little too worried about him being sort of like decoy mode, just because we've seen that so many times. Maybe the 6 targets negates that or something, but I don't know. I think Andy Dalton might be my favorite quarterback play of the slate. Same. At price and ownership for GPPs, and easy stack with Deontay. I feel like Jamar's a must play if you're going to play Burrow or Dalton. And then I like Andre Iosivas. He led the team in XFP last week. He's back in the slot, played a full 80% route share. Trenton Irwin was a healthy scratch. Jasicki's in the argument too. I think he like leads all tight ends in a landslide by yards per route run, targets per. He's only he only has a 50% route share, but he's like looked damn good, and he's getting peppered with targets whenever he's on the field. And really, that's just because the tight end position's so dead and gross. But yeah, Hubbard, I think is in play. I question the stack with one of the quarterbacks just because I guess Cincinnati is not giving a lot up through the air, but I don't know. Maybe that's just a minor point. I don't know. Deontay plus Chase plus whoever, you really can't go wrong with that. Brett said on your show he thinks this game should have the highest over-under of the week, and I think that might be right. Just like two awful defenses, two now competent offenses. So, yeah, I think this game is really exciting.
Yeah, well, you look at this. I mean, we got a 12-game slate. 10 of the 12 games have totals. Sorry, 9 of the 12 games have totals below 44. I mean, it's just this game. This slate sucks, and this game really stands out. It's also like, both of these quarterbacks are pretty good. You go back and you look at Dalton's numbers dating back to even like 2020, and then compared to the NFL average. I mean, he's above average in yards per attempt, above average in touchdown rate, and then he gets a what we all consider to be a really good coach. I'm with you on Dalton for sure.
Revenge narrative too.
Yeah, he also gets the revenge narrative. Although he's not going into Cincinnati, it's at home, so
it's not quite Aaron Jones, but it's still there.
It's still there for sure. And the Yoshivas call, Scott, is a great one. I was kind of expecting Yoshivas to play a little more outside, and they get Chase back in the slot with their full 3 receiver set. Nope, it was all Yoshivas.
Hey, don't forget he was a small sample ascot last year too, just like Jalen Naylor. And
dude, that was the only reason I drafted him late in best ball. The ass was popping for him.
He was way better in the slot too. He was like elite in the slot and like a 20 route sample.
Dude, he's just good at the game. I think he might just be good at the game. All right, last game of the 1 p.m. slate, and again, Mark has a little bit of an out, so we do need to keep it moving here real quick. We'll fly through this. Jets, Broncos. Jets are 7.5 point favorites. 39.5 is the total. Scott, obviously Braylon Allen's cutting in a little bit to Breece Hall, but Breece is still averaging 20 fantasy points per game. 6, 8, 5 targets. You can't hate it. On this slate though, when Saquon is only 200 more, I will say I'm preferring Saquon, and I don't think people are on that. It seems like early ownership projections have it the opposite way. Not saying that's wrong or bad call, but I do think it's close at the top this week. What do you think about Jets and Broncos here, man?
Yeah. Although there was that Crack Rock report that he talked to Jets brass who said they really want to decrease Breece Hall's usage, and Braylon Allen's here to stay, and like Allen looks awesome. But Denver's defense has sucked against running backs for like 20 games in a row now. This is a game they should win easily. I expect them to lean heavily on the running backs, but 7.5 point spread. Maybe it's a lot of Braylon Allen in the fourth quarter. Garrett Wilson's going to get Patrick Surtain, but he's been running a lot more of his routes from the slot. Really, I'm kind of not on any of them.
Yeah.
Rodgers looked great last week, by the way, but Riley Moss, the white boy, is looking nice, dude. And their slot cornerback's been killer. Like, so in past years, they were like a wide receiver 2 funnel. Now they're more of a running back tight end funnel. So maybe that's targets to Breece Hall. Maybe that's a little bit of Tyler Conklin, who had a big game last week. But ultimately, I'm not really on anyone except for Breece, who, like you said, Saquon's the better play. Denver, I don't think there's a single player. So yeah,
dude, Xing out Sutton, Xing out this backfield. Mark, I don't know if you feel any differently about Broncos. I do like your Conklin call though, Scott. I was shaking my head earlier at tight end. Conklin does kind of pop a little bit, I think, at 3,600.
Yep, nothing to add. Stay away.
Yeah. All right, let's get to the afternoon slate here. Washington Commanders and the Arizona Cardinals. This has the highest total of the week at 49. Cardinals are 3.5 point favorites. The Jaden Daniels, kind of ascent keeps going up a little bit here. I never thought I would have to hand it to Cliff Kingsbury, but last week was a pretty good game plan. You kind of play conservatively the first couple weeks, then open things up with the deep passing game. Daniels just missed McLaurin. He didn't even see him. McLaurin was wide ass open, but it was a pretty good game from Kingsbury. Jaden Daniels, though, Scott, I mean, you just need to take a victory lap now, I think. I mean, if he stays healthy, the dude's going to finish top 5 in fantasy points, probably top 3. Really fun game. A lot of fun angles into this game. However, it's going to be massively, massively popular. What's your read on this game here, man?
Boy. Yeah. Jaden Daniels, cash quarterback. Brian Robinson, cash running back.
Yeah.
I really like him. I'm really excited about him. Cliff Kingsbury, historically, this is a big narrative back when he was an OC. Always goes with a bell cow when one of his 2 starters goes down. Like, he prefers a committee, but if one of those 2 goes down, he always goes bell cow. And we've seen Brian Robinson smash in a bell cow role. He very sneakily ranks 4th among all running backs in yards per route run since the start of last season. We're seeing running backs really, really heavily involved in the passing game in this offense. It's a great matchup. Washington, we know, one of the worst secondaries in football, but they've been really bad against the run. So they're a little bit less of the pass funnel they were last year. Marvin Harrison Jr., I think, is very close to a must play. You've all seen my tweet about wide receiver 1s versus Washington over the last 20 games. There's not a single miss there. If you want to be a little nitpicky, I do worry about the too high coverage with him, which really slowed him down in week 1. Washington, easy bottom 3 secondary by every metric. They've only given up 3 deep catches to wide receivers this year. Not really buying into that, but if you wanted to be nitpicky, I could see Michael Wilson as like just a good play in tandem with Harrison, or maybe sort of like a leverage play, like I tried to argue for Jawan Jennings last week. Cause he's also like phenomenal against zone. He's phenomenal against too high. I think he has like 60 career yards against man, but much better against too high and zone. And then maybe one of my favorite plays of the slate, in all honesty, is Elijah Higgins, 3,100, ran just about every route last week after McBride went down. This is a wide receiver who converted to tight end at a 110 point something speed score. He had like 750 receiving yards in his final season at Stanford. Tight ends are a focal point of this offense. I think only twice over their last 20 games did their tight ends fail to combine for 8 or more targets. Really sort of a focal point of the offense. So there's a lot of players I really like on Arizona's side. Washington, I have more difficulty getting excited about someone beyond Jaden Daniels. Oh, and James Conner is always a good play. That could be, or he's a great leverage play, because what I keep bringing up with Arizona is Drew Petzing like really loves to pound the rock way more than he ever gets credit for. Kyler Murray, great play too, but like I said, Washington's run defense isn't as it's bad, just like their secondary is bad. So it could be a 2 touchdown game for him. Yeah, those are all my thoughts. That was my little brain dump. Maybe Hilo can help me clean that up.
Yeah, I think James Conner is a phenomenal play. I think the field is getting skittish after his predictable implosion last week against the Lions. If you look at like his underlying metrics, I mean, he's top 12 in opportunity share and snap rate. He's playing like a 70-ish kind of opportunity share and snap rate. So that's like more than lead back, but less than workhorse back. But if you get that in this spot, clear multi-touchdown, 100-yard plus upside. So I really like him as a leverage piece off of Kyler, who's going to be popular, off of Marvin Harrison Jr., who's going to be popular. And I think thinking through like ways to play this game, I think you can, I don't want to use double negative. I think you can play both backs from this game on the same roster. If the game flow is kind of within a touchdown either way, I think both of these teams are just going to continue doing what they do. Obviously, James Conner has more outs because they're significant favorites at home with the highest vague supply team total of the week. But I think Brian Robinson, you covered all the things, all the good stuff about him here as well.
No, you can definitely play them together because B-Rob is going to get every touch and target. I mean, they've got nothing else behind him. So
Yeah.
love
Bunch of
that
practice
call.
squad dudes.
Yeah, B-Rob is the best value, I think, on the slate, like pound for pound. And I think projections, honestly, are a little bit low across the industry on him. Yeah, is there anything else from this game? Because these next three are very straightforward. Hilo, do you have any other, kind of like game theory thoughts or kind of like leverage plays in this game? Michael Wilson was going to be the one I brought up, but Scott kind of touched on that already. Anything else here?
No, the way that I'm approaching this spot, at least from the Arizona side, is they're highly unlikely to fail to score 3+ touchdowns. So we expect them to score points. So we probably have to account for that in some way. If they land on the low end of that, there are value pieces here that can be, that can provide some, just like I'm trying to like phrase this in a way that I'm not mincing my words, but like if the entirety of the tight end position fails to put the slate out of reach, which is a little bit clearer path on a slate like this, where it's like the pay up options. One of them has a concussion and is out, and Trey McBride, and then you have like Travis Kelce. And there's just not a lot of pay up options that have to like fail that have that clear path to 30+, 25+ fantasy points. So if that's the case, it kind of gives a little bit more leeway for some of these cheaper options to be viable. If you don't need 30 points up and down your roster to ship a GPP, right? So Elijah Higgins is very interesting. Elijah Higgins is a piece that is more interesting to me in a game flow where the Cardinals are scoring 3 touchdowns instead of 4. Because if the Cardinals are scoring 4 touchdowns, it's much, much more likely that it's a 2 touchdown game for one of their primary pieces. So they would now become more viable. So this is a very interesting situation. I think the field is not going to overlook this spot, but I also think the field is not going to buy in completely. So if this game turns into a shootout, and we've seen multiple shootouts with Washington, if this game turns into a shootout, people are not going to really want to play Kyler Murray with Marvin Harrison Jr. and the running back. So those are the things I'm kind of looking for in this situation. And then furthermore, people are not going to want to play James Conner in that 3-person stack and then bring it back with Brian Robinson. But these are all viable like paths for this game to play out that I think are going to go under owned. So when I see a spot like this where it's like we probably have to account for it in some way, I start thinking about how can I play this differently than the field, where the field is more likely to just be like primary from each side, or like not include James Conner in a Arizona stack, or not play both running backs from the spot. So that's kind of my read on the situation from this game.
Nice. Like all of that. All right, we'll keep it going here. Finish out with these last 3 games and rip through this one. Patriots and the Niners. We're going to get one more week of Jacoby Brissett being, as Joe would say, the meat shield back there, just absorbing all of the sacks behind this offensive line. I do think they're going to get their left side back. Vidarian Lau and City Sal, left tackle, left guard for Patriots, should be back, I think, in this game. It's just really hard to get there with. Actually, I take it back. Their left tackle Lau is out. It's just hard to get there with Patriots this week. Such a low total. Jordan Mason, Mark, is going to be mega chalk once again. He's going to push 30-40% ownership. The price is coming up on him for sure, but it's not to the point where he's obviously not a value. Quick notes here. Debo, I think, is going to try and play, but we'll see. Kittle is full clear from the hamstring injury, so lucky to see that one hamstring injury is kind of minor. What do you think about Niners and Patriots? And is it one more week with Jordan Mason, being sub 7K here?
Yeah, Jordan Mason, again, we talked about, or I brought up last week how he was probably shakier chalk than the field was probably realizing. I think it's the same situation here. And that's due to the schematic elements of the Patriots defense. They want to remove a top pass catcher, and they want to crack down against the run. This team is allowing 80-something yards of rushing per game.
This is the second year they've been doing this, man. They've been a really good run defense for 2 years. Yeah. And
so how do they usually do that? They usually put their top corner on the secondary option, and they usually use safety help to blanket the top option. So that's probably what Ayuk is going to see here, is probably going to see blanket. And we're probably going to see Jawan Jennings, probably. I don't think Debo is going to play much if he does play, and I would expect he's going to. I would hope he would be inactive, honestly, based on his injury history. That's a different story, but it's probably going to see Jawan Jennings on Christian Gonzalez, and they're probably going to blanket Ayuk. And that, to me, opens up some massive upside for Kittle if he is legitimately like it was just a tight hamstring instead of a hamstring pull or something, that's my read on the situation. It was just tight. So I really, really like George Kittle on a really gross tight end slate where everybody's going to be looking to pay down. I'm like, is there an option that can put this out of reach where like you had to have this guy or you weren't winning a GPP? To me, that's probably Kittle and then probably Goddard after that. But I really, really like Kittle. And I think he's an amazing leverage play with that Q tag or whatever, he's had for the past 2 weeks. And then on the opposite side, there's really not a lot to like. You could take GPP shots on Ramondre Stevenson, but even then it's really, really shaky.
Yeah, I can't get there with Ramondre. If you were, a little cheaper, 6,200 on this slate, there's just so many good running back plays. I don't think I can get there with Stevenson. Scott, you got anything else to add here? We got a couple minutes before we need to get out of here.
No, I'm with you on George Kittle. Over his last 14 games, he averages 23 DraftKings fantasy points per game in his top 50% of games. And so he's just going to be like my number one GPP tight end every week he's on the field because this position is so gross and so dead and he has unrivaled upside. And we just saw Jawan Jennings go nuclear. He was really in the Kittle role. He was working in the middle area of the field that Kittle typically operates with more volume for sure. But
The final note there is the Patriots really, really struggle to get pressure too. So Kittle should be free to run more routes.
Yeah, I mean, I had this for last week,
That's a good
but
point.
in 6 games without Debo, Kittle is averaging 19.5 PPR points per game. Last 6 games without Debo. And I think you're right, Mark. If Debo does play, he'll be somewhat limited, but just more fuel to the fire there for Kittle. All right, 2 more games here. Chiefs and Chargers. We'll get to this one first. Chiefs are 7-point favorites. Total's 40. Obviously, we're waiting on Justin Herbert news, but even if he plays, he might be a sitting duck out there. He re-injured his high ankle injury, Edwin said last week. This game has just massive downside because the Chargers offense might be, it might be Easton Stick led. All of that being said, Scott, it was Rashee Rice season. It's once again Rashee Rice week. He's still way too cheap for a player who's going to be $8K in a couple weeks. Like I said, the big concern here is just how much Chargers push the Chiefs, but it's Rashee week once again.
Yeah, I think really strong cash wide receiver. Yeah. I think he's going to be super chalky. So just the one question I would have is like, does he have the upside? Like he doesn't, like the PPR is for sure going to be there, but the touchdown upside,
dude, I'm just viewing this as like we're getting Amon-Ra St. Brown at 7,300.
Yeah, it feels like, okay, you win. Yeah, I'm overthinking it. Done. Okay.
Yeah, it feels like we're getting the 2022, 23 St. Brown at this price. It's just, he's going to be 30% owned, but honestly, I'd make an argument he should be 50%.
Yeah. This is a weird trend I've been doing where like I'm all my Exodia plays and like redraft plays that smash. Now I'm arguing against them for stuff. Like I just not willing to believe the fantasy gods are going to let me win in redraft and DFS this year.
You should have been like Johnny. You should have been a lawyer. I've told you this a couple times. You master arguer of both sides.
With myself.
Mark, I know we're trying to get out of here, Mark, but do you have any thoughts here on this game beyond, Rashee? And is there an angle into this Chiefs backfield here?
No, I don't think there is. Steele is just not going to be as involved in the pass game, obviously, as Pacheco even was. And it's just a gross timeshare. I'm gonna move on. I got nothing to add on Kansas City. I'm just gonna talk real quick about the last game, and then I gotta bounce. But Trey Tucker has some fairly significant man coverage splits during his career, and now we're expecting him to move from a 60%-ish snap rate to like a 95% snap rate with Devontae Adams out. And he's playing a Cleveland team that is second in the league in man coverage rate. So that is very, very interesting to me, and could be one of the better value plays on the slate now.
Love that shout. He's a good player, man. Yeah, 9 targets last week.
I gotta bounce, guys. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
No worries. See you highlight.
Yeah, no worries.
We'll see you guys.
Yeah, get out of here, man. Scott, you and I will finish this off. There's not a whole lot to this game. Obviously, Bowers, we need to talk through at 5,600. I like Mark's shout on Trey Tucker. Jacoby Myers, too, 5,500, probably, going to end up being a pretty decent play. What do you think about this game, man? Get us out of here with Browns and Raiders.
I think Bowers is the cash tight end. I think he's a really good play.
So
Ryan Heath kind of wants to nitpick the schematic matchup, which I get. I just think no Michael Mayer either. The route share is going to jump up to 90%.
That's exactly what it is.
And I like Trey Tucker too. I like him more than Jacoby Myers. I think he's a really good play. Browns, you can make an argument for Jerome Ford, who's been a bell cow in each of their losses, not involved in their win. It's a really good on paper matchup. Still, the spread is close, so he feels really thin to me. Cooper, you could play every week just because the air yards are there, but I don't know.
And Watson's just toast.
Exactly.
I was going to hype up a little bit of Ford as contrarian play, but man, their offensive line is just beat to shit. Jack Conklin's going to miss this game again. He's not going to come back. Jedrick Willis is out. They put Wyatt Teller on IR, their guard. I think Jerome Ford's like in play for tournaments, and I kind of liked him to start this week, but I've kind of soured on that. I will say Max Crosby's going to miss this game. First career game he's ever going to miss. The Raiders pass rush was already kind of bad even with Crosby, but they're really going to struggle to get to Watson even with the down lineman in this game. So kind of does negate itself. I think that's going to do it. We covered all the bases. Scott, always fun to do cash and points with you, man. Make sure you check out Outside the Box with Neil and Scott tomorrow. They walk through position by position and give out all of their DFS intel. Make sure you're checking out Scott's slate breakdown. I think Mark just got cash plays up a couple hours ago, so all the DFS stuff is up for this week. And Jake will not be doing the Underdog Battle Royale show. Obviously tonight he's without power, so that'll be back next week with him and Ryan. Scott and I are taking down tournaments this week. It's happening.
Let's do it.
It's just week 4 is locked in stone. If we don't do it, we'll see you guys at the top of the leaderboards.
What?
Why are you shaking your head? You're welcome.